Hi all. Um, this short tutorial is going to address some questions that have been asked about setting up a data set in Excel. We like to use Excel for data sets because it's very easy to upload them to SPSS, and you might be collecting data in a site that perhaps is such that you don't have access to SPSS, because you can set up the same information in SPSS. But we often use Excel because it's something that is easy. We can store it on our own computers. Um, and so it has a great amount of advantages to us. There are only a few simple guidelines for setting up such a spreadsheet. And so I wanted to go over them with you very quickly. First of all, I've provided you a very brief article where Minoka looked at pre-menstrual caloric intake and post-menstrual caloric intake. Um, and the reason why I really like this article, and I refer to it often, is that he actually provides us with the data set. He shows us the results, so it's a neat thing, and we can use it for several different purposes in our class. But in this case, so you can read that article and follow this along very carefully. Um, so I just wanted to show you how to set up an Excel spreadsheet to upload to SPSS. Um, okay, so first of all, in the Minoka study, actually there are only 11 participants, and I think of this as being a small pilot study. But he measured each person twice. So I have here, I actually am showing it as though we have 22 participants, each with a premenstrual caloric intake and each with a post-menstrual caloric intake. You will notice on this spreadsheet that in row 1 is where we put the name of the variables. And when you're using variables to upload to SPSS, I would highly encourage you to use all caps, as I have here. Make the variable names 8 characters or less. And that's for two reasons. Number one, if you keep the variable name short, the columns will be short, or narrower, I should say. And so when you copy this into a Word document as part of, say, a paper, the columns will be much easier to manage. The reason why I like to put them in all caps is that this is a common convention, way of doing things in statistics. When we talk about these in our paper and they're in all caps, they kind of stand out as being the variables of interest to us. So that's row 1. We put the variable names there, all caps, and we try to limit them to 8 characters in length, if at all possible. Words like age and gender work well. If we were interested in those, we could just actually put those in like this, age and gender. But we're not going to use those for these, so let me remove those to keep this simple. Secondly, notice there's no shading throughout the whole document. There are no border lines. And all we have is one row with our variable names and then a set of numbers in these two columns. And that's because SPSS will only recognize numerical information. If I start putting other information in here, it may cause problems in uploading this to SPSS. You also note that I don't even have a participant column, and I don't feel that it's needed. SPSS won't need it. SPSS will recognize this 1480 as being the participant one's pre-menstrual caloric intake, which I'm calling pre-cal. So all I did was I went through, and you can imagine if we were doing this study, I would set up one column with the variable pre-cal, one with variable post-cal, and then as I measured each participant's mean daily caloric intake during that period, I would list it here as 1480, 1970, 1800, and so forth and so on. And then in the post measurement, I simply list those numbers here, 1235, 1650, etc., etc. So this is a simple way, and the proper way to set up an Excel spreadsheet with your data to upload it to SPSS. Just to recap one more time, variables go in the top row. We keep them in all caps, 8 characters or less in length, and then we simply put in our numerical data. So now the problem becomes, what if we have a variable like gender, which, as you know, is a nominal variable. We can't put in male, female, etc. like that because SPSS won't recognize that. In the case of nominal and ordinal data, we have to code this. So if this was a study involving males and females and participant 1 was a male, I might list that as a 0. Female was a 1. This was a female 1. This was a female 1. And this was a male 0. If it was, say, job satisfaction, I might use the variable job satisfaction. And I might have a Likert scale that's collecting ordinal data, and it might be not satisfied, satisfied, and very satisfied. So what I might want to do is call not satisfied a 0. Perhaps this person said they were very satisfied. That would be a 2. This person said they were satisfied, and that was a 1. So this could be uploaded to SPSS, and of course I would fill out the entire column for all 22 participants. Then what I would do is I would go to a second sheet, and actually I would do this as I'm setting this up. And so I want to set up my codes. I want to say male is a 0, female is a 1, and it doesn't matter. You can reverse that if you want to call the male the 1, the female the 0. That doesn't matter. I would just be consistent about it. Job satisfaction representing an ordinal variable. Let me see, we said not satisfied, satisfied, and very satisfied. We will want to show how we coded these as well. 0 for not satisfied, 1 for satisfied, 2 for very satisfied. And so we want to keep that code sheet with us so that we can remember down the road how we coded this. We might have 20, 30 variables. And so we want to be able to remember how we coded them. I would ask you up front to consider to make these code numbers something that's logical and makes sense to you. For me, not being satisfied is easy to remember as being a 0. And then I can go up from there, 1 being satisfied, 2 very satisfied. One of the variables that's used a lot in healthcare is smoking. So if I had that variable and I asked people if they had never smoked, they had smoked at one time and then quit, or they were still smoking, I might also list those in that same order. 0, never, 1, quit, 2, still. So that you have some logical basis for the coding that you've used. So you want to keep that, even though that would not be uploaded to SPSS because SPSS does not need to read the code. So more on that a little bit later, but I thought this would help you in terms of setting up an Excel spreadsheet. In the next tutorial, I'll go over how to upload an Excel spreadsheet to SPSS, and I'll talk about in an additional video a brief overview of SPSS and how to get in and start navigating that system. So thank you for your attention to this video.